Welcome, I'm Lizzie Brooks and this is form-focused weight training. So make sure that you have some weights that feel like you could go down or up or right in between. If you don't have those types of things, just grab whatever you have and we'll make it work. So come on and join me on your mat. Welcome. So two things. I recommend that you warm up a little bit before doing this with me, and also to have a blanket or a towel to pad your knees. So let's grab that blanket or towel now. Place it underneath your kneecaps and come into an all fours position. So I mentioned that I wanted you to warm up, but we're gonna warm up just a teeny tiny bit together. You can always add more, just some flexion and extension of the spine, or cat-cow as we call it in yoga, rounding, opening behind the shoulder blades, draping the tail and the head, and then reversing that, lifting the heart forward, hips up. Just a few times, and root your fingertips and your ball joints, especially your first finger and thumb ball joint, down towards the mat so you're not rolling right into this outer edges of your hands. Tuck your toes under and draw into a downward dog. Just lengthen the back of the legs. You don't have to get the heels all the way down. Just maybe bend one knee and the other, getting some increased stretch and blood flow. Soften the neck, let go of any overworking in your jaw. As we prepare the body, lower the knees slowly all the way down. Grab two weights, and I would say anywhere between medium to a little heavier, depending on how much you want to work today. Even if you use no weight, it's still useful. So I'm going to go ahead and go with my 12s. I'm going to place those on the mat underneath my shoulders, holding on with my hands. From here, we want to check in with what are we doing with our torso. So instead of sagging here, we want to recruit some of those organs moving towards the spine without rounding like we were in cat. And then we'll do a row, a simple row here. One and then the other. Just think about grazing almost the inner arm with the side body and putting the weight softly back down. So we don't want to kind of throw the weight back down with a thud. Instead, try to slow the movement, which increases your time under tension. So you can do the same amount of reps, but slower, and it actually makes you work harder because the time under tension is longer. There's reasons for slowing it down, and there's reasons for speeding it up, and both are valid for different reasons. So let's do one more on the opposite side. Place that down, and then you can place your hands on the weights or on the mat and reach the hips back and just wiggle the hips a little side to side. Open the side body. Take a deep breath in, sigh out. All right, so we're gonna come back. And you might do what you just did, or if you want more, we'll take this into a plank pose. I recommend for balance purposes, taking the feet wider than together. If you want more challenge, take them together. And then we'll add just a little bit of that row, because we didn't do many on that first kneeling position, or knees down position, adding that row here. Now, instead of turning to the side so much, try to keep the pelvis the front of the pelvis looking down at the floor. And just two more on each side. Stay with it. If you need to change the weights out or pretend you have weights and don't use weights, then do that. Invisible weights work. Knees down, shift back into that child's pose, get off the wrists and wiggle it out. Deep breath in and sigh that out. Move your blanket or your towel out of the way. We might use that later. And we'll come on up to a standing position. Again, if that felt like it was a lot, we're going into the legs now, so we might be able to use a little heavier weights, but if you're feeling a little tuckered out, let's go lighter. Okay, so I'm gonna show you from the side. When I bend my knees in this squat, I'm not gonna think about bending my knees forward. I'm gonna more so think about hinging my hips back. So instead of here, more so here, okay? And you can do all of this work in shoes or in bare feet. I like to spend more time in bare feet just because it's nice to work the feet and for our balance and for many other reasons. Now, hinging back and putting some anchor into your heels here. The weights are just hanging down from the arms. You're obviously working your arms just by holding the weights as well as your hands, and you'll probably feel that in your forearms a lot. Hinging that back. And now we're gonna make a change. Shift your weights in front of you and go lighter if needed. We're going to shift the hips back, but the weights go in front of the shins. Again, we're keeping the elbows pretty straight here. If you tend to hyperextend in the elbows though, you could of course put a micro bend so that you're more working in the muscles and less stress in the joints. Taking those weights forward as the hips come back. Think about pushing a button with your glutes or your hips behind you and coming up, pushing that button. Hopefully that's not the self-destruct button. Let it be the, what's that commercial? The easy button. Press the easy button with your hips and press it back. One more time. You're doing great. I know it. And come all the way up. Hang the weights down for a moment. Deep breath in. Sigh that out. And place your weights down. So I always like to bring mobility into my workouts as well. So just pick one arm, widen your feet, and circle that up, back, and around, externally rotating. And then do that on the other side. The other arm can do whatever it wants. We're focusing on this one now. Getting both arms nice and open through the shoulder girdle and catching our breath a little bit. And shake that all out, maybe kick the legs out. All right, so we're gonna do a bit of a split stance here. And you can go heavier with your weight because we're only using one weight this time. So I'm gonna grab a 15 and hold that in my hands. Again, you can hold one. You can use two weights here if you don't really have something very heavy. Okay, so there, we're doing a bit of a split stance. So pick one leg and put it forward and tuck your toes back behind you. Instead of hinging those hips and bending the knees and hinging so much, we're actually going to draw, the arms are still long, down towards the front of the ankle or the shin and back up. Down towards the front of the ankle or the shin and back up. We'll probably feel this a lot in the glutes and hamstrings because we are also getting a stretch here. So no need to touch the weight all the way down. And if you can only go maybe halfway down, go halfway down. That's great. Drawing the low belly gently in and up for support. Always breathing. There is an element of balance here, which is amazing for the body and the brain. And one more time, down and up. Okay, pause in the middle for a moment, breathe. Maybe sigh that out. Come back to breathing through the nasal passages if you can. Put the other foot forward and you're kind of on the ball joints of that back foot. I'm only about 1.5 feet apart. You can play with that stance, but make sure you're not on a tightrope, that the feet are wide like the hips. There's a bend in my front knee, but it's not a huge bend. And I'm going up and down. I'm coming to full standing when I draw up. And again, how far you go forward is up to you. You can even play with bending your front knee a little bit more or a little less and see how that feels for the glutes, for the hamstrings, and also the knee joint itself. Up and down. So these will probably feel the next day. These are like Romanian deadlifts with a split stance. And I tend to feel like I work harder when I have that split stance versus if I was doing this with my feet together. I think I get a little more out of it than when my feet are together, but I do both variations. Let's do 3 more. 2. Last one. And you could always slow down and do less reps than I'm doing. And then take your feet underneath you, hang the weight down and breathe. All right, now we'll do a couple of that foot together position so you can just feel the difference. Hinging just a little bit at the knees And, excuse me, hinging at the hips and bending a little bit at the knees, up and down. There is, again, a bend. You're not straight in the legs, but you also aren't doing a squat like that, okay? So there is a differentiation, and you'll probably feel this also in the low back. Working the low back is actually okay. Sometimes when we get sensation in the low back, we're like, oh, there must be a problem. No, you have muscles there, we're working them. All right, we're going to leave the weight and walk back into another downward dog where we pedal it out, reroute our hands to the floor, and reroute our connection to the breath. Soften that neck. Press back into child's pose, lengthening the lumbar. Knees can be separated or together, completely up to you. It might feel nicer together to get more of that rounded length in the spine. And second time we'll come up to our all fours position here. So grab some padding for the knees. And we're gonna work triceps as well as through the torso, the core. So if you know that when you take kickbacks, that's a doozy on the triceps, then I would go light weights on this. I'm actually just gonna use my 5s because when I am talking and making a video, I want to be able to continue to talk instead of just getting so winded. So go ahead and take those weights under you. And in fact, you can just use your right hand down and a left hand weight because we're going to we're not going to alternate back and forth. We're going to stay on one side for a while. So first things first, take the belly parallel to the floor. Draw your organs towards the spine. Draw your elbow alongside of your body and then keep it there and just move at the elbow joint back and forth here. Moving that weight back and any amount towards the shoulder. It doesn't have to touch the shoulder, but it comes kind of back either hanging or a little bit more towards the shoulder. If you want to add a heck of a lot more going on, then you will lift your right leg. So right hand down, left knee down, right leg back, and your left arm is the one moving with the weight. Breathing here. If when you took your leg behind you and you actively reached it, you felt like, uh-oh, that collapsed my lumbar or it's just too much, put the knee back down. 3, 2, last one, and place the weight down. You get to choose, are you taking a child's pose or a downward facing dog in between your set or in between the weights? And then we'll join back in all fours. So this time you just need your left hand down, organs draw towards the spine, so you want to make sure that you're not collapsed and you're not rounded. Take that elbow up to the side body, knees are roughly hips distance apart, and you'll take that hinge movement at the right elbow, back and forth. What sometimes happens with this is we tend to shift back so our shoulder is more back from the wrist rather than over. See if you can make sure that the shoulder is over the wrist and slow and easy. I said easy, I don't mean easy. Slow and deliberate, not easy, back and forth. If you want more, you will lift your left leg up. I like to tuck my right toes under to help with stability rather than the top of my foot, but you can choose what works best for you. Plug that left femur head deep into the pelvis, activate through the quads, even the glutes, back and forth. Are you on fire like I am? 3, 2, 1. Lower the knee if it's not. Child's pose or downward facing dog, maybe with a little swish side to side. And speaking of sides, we're going to open them up a little bit more so you can move your weights over off of your mat. And then take your hands in front of you, not in a chest down child's pose, but more of a diagonal out of the pelvis with the torso. And then draw the right rib cage down, let the left roll up a bit. Come to center. Let the left ribs roll down and the right roll up a bit. And back to center. You can go a little further forward if that feels like you're ready for it. And up. Other side of the rib cage down. and up. Come to all fours, and let's take care of our forearms. We've been holding these weights, so turn your fingertips towards your knees and breathe here. Let some weight come into the heels of the hands and breathe and open the underside of the forearms. If you want to increase the stretch here, most of us are like, no, we're good. If you want to increase the stretch, tuck your toes and reach your hips back, and that will increase that stretch feeling there. Breathing. Relax your jaw. And rolling off and shaking that out. Okay, so you can move your blanket or towel out of the way and grab a heavy weight. So, and I say heavy, what's heavy for you? It's all relative. So for some of us, a 5-pound weight, like we're not used to doing weights, 5 pounds is heavy. For those of us who've been working with them a lot, maybe we'll take a 15 or even up, okay? So we're gonna do another split stance, but this time it's in a full lunge. So let's take the left leg forward. I have deodorant all over my pants, super professional. And the right leg back into a lunge. Now I don't want your hips lower than your knees, please. So make sure you're at least the same height or a little higher. Hold the weight in your right hand, left knee is forward, and we're gonna let all of the movement happen from hinging down and up, down and up. So it's the movement is happening, hinging the torso forward and up. Now, if you want to make this a little more functional movement, you can let the other arm come off to the side. Maybe it's a fist here. If you're really working that balance and you feel like the balance isn't there, maybe hand on the waist is a little bit easier today. This is going deep into the ball and socket joint of that front hip, among other things that are definitely working, but that's probably where you're going to feel this the most. 2, last one, come all the way up. Okay, now take that weight up to your shoulder, turn the knuckles forward and press up. You're going to do, this is a asymmetrical shoulder press, taking your right elbow down at least shoulder height and then pressing it up slowly, working the legs because obviously you're in a lunge. And if you want to change that back leg for a little more work, you're going to bend the back knee and let it hover over the ground. Now, some of us might go, ooh, we thought we could use a heavier weight, and now this is too much. Put the weight down, maybe change the weight to something lighter, or let it go completely. 2, and 1. Softly move the weight back down. Step it forward. Breathe. Feet wider than the hips. Breathe here. Take the weight in front of you. Bend your knees a bit. Hinge your hips slightly back. And slowly move the weight down to the floor. Leave it there. Hands down. Downward dog or child's pose. Maybe sway the hips side to side. Come back to your breathing. So we want to provide our muscles with really good breath. Not only the inhales, but the exhales as well. Look to the top of your mat, take your feet there. And then grab your weight in both hands and reverse the way you came down, back up. Take the weight into your left hand. And we're gonna do the other side of this. Okay, so right leg is forward. And you're turning your knuckles towards your right inner thigh. Make sure your feet are wide enough apart. Remember, with your right hand, you can hold a wall, reach out to the side, reach down, or waist if you need more balance. Hinging at the hips to just lower that straight arm and torso down and back up. So I'm not rolling at my back here like this. I'm not rounding my back. I'm thinking of keeping my back nice with its neutral curves intact and moving more from the hip joint to take the torso down and up. Really working into now the right ball and socket joint and all of those very strong, deeply wrapped muscles in our hip. You can always slow this down. You can always let go of the weight and do it without weight. You'll still be working, I promise you. I think you know that. Breathing. And then as you're ready, we will come all the way back up. Bring the weight towards the shoulder, okay? Turn it out to the side, knuckles forward, and come into our shoulder press within that lunge. Up and down. Now, if you want a little more work, you'll bend that back knee to hovering. And yes, of course, that back knee can come all the way down to the ground at any time as you deem necessary. This is your workout. We're all getting stronger together, and we need to do it in our own way. 2, 1, take the weight back down and step forward and breathe. So even just holding a weight in one hand and standing is useful to the body. It's just asymmetrical holding of weight. Take the weight in front of us. Hinge gently at the hips, gently at the knees. Little Romanian deadlift on the way down, or a dead not lift, reverse lift, drop, and then come into your downward dog or your child's pose and pedal it out. Soften the neck. This time, everybody lower down into a child's pose and roll the wrists out. You might shake them out. You can even bloom the hands out and in. We really need to take care of the hands and the wrists and the forearms, both sides, when we're doing weight workouts. And what we're gonna do now is take a forearm stretch that you might never have done unless you work with me a lot, but we're gonna do it on the knees. This is amazing. Even if you don't work with weights, but even if you drive a lot, you're on the computer a lot, you don't realize how much tension we actually have through our forearms and how that can affect our shoulders, our hands, our necks. So hang your arms down from a kneeling position. Make a gentle soft fist, so not like, but a gentle fist. Then take your knuckles as if they were gonna touch the underside of your forearms. Do you feel that? I certainly do. And then we'll roll the knuckles out to the sides, in, a little forward, towards us, and back and out to the sides. Just do that a few times. Keep curling the knuckles deeply in towards the underside of the forearms. And then shake that out. Oh, yeah. Then for the underside of the forearms, we'll revisit. Hands come down. And this time, if you're ready to shift the hips a little further back, you can. And you can play with letting the knuckles stay down, but the heels of the hands lift, which will give you a different sensation. And then peel it all the way back. And let that go. Move your blanket off to the side. And move your weight, your heavy weight, off to the side as well. Okay, so coming onto your sitting bones, bring the legs forward, shake them out. We'll move deeply into the shoulders as well as core, as well as hip flexors. There's a lot going on with this one, and I want you to choose the level that works best for you. So I am gonna choose a 12-pound weight. It's still heavy. I would start with something lighter to just get a feel for how this works for you. We're gonna roll down, keep the ankles active, and roll down our spines onto the mat. And then take the weight above the shoulders, bend the knees, drape the tailbone underneath as if you're trying to touch the low back onto the floor, which will engage the musculature here. Then keep that and bend your elbows 90 degrees or more and come back up. So we're back in those triceps in a very different way, 90 degrees or more. And you'll probably feel something like, if you're keeping the lumbar really pushed down onto the ground, you'll probably feel that your core is working. Okay, we're just doing a couple of these, and then we're gonna change this completely, where again, I'll give you options. Back, up. Okay, now from here, stretch the legs straight back, engage at the ankles. Take the arms more straight. You can bend any amount, more straight, back, up, and then lift the head, the shoulders, the arms, and you'll come all the way to seating with your, or seated with your weight above your head. We'll roll down. As you roll down, your weight can come forward any amount. Come all the way down. Shoulders come back, arms come back. You'll feel that again, that side, those lats. Then lifting the weight above the shoulders. I probably have called it a block before. Peel the head and shoulders, mid back, middle back up, or excuse me, sacrum off, sit up tall, reach that weight up. And reverse. So you can remove the weight. You can skip this movement where the arms come back. If that's a little bit too much, you can skip that and just do the sitting up and down. You can bend your knees and not come all the way up if that's preferred. Nice and slow is where we're going to gain that strength. We're not using momentum here. Keeping it more controlled, finding that form, and supporting it all the way up. All right, now from here, bring the weight in front of you or invisible weight. Bring your feet into a knees bent, or feet down, knees bent position. And then roll down from there. Now I noticed right now I'm halfway through, I need to actually take my feet a little closer in. They were a little too far apart. I'm gonna roll all the way down. Hold the weight up, and I'm just going to just kind of give the body an idea of what we're gonna do. So we're just gonna take the knee alternating towards the weight, and the weight alternating towards the opposite knee. And then if I want a little bit more, I'm going to alternately straighten the leg and take the weight towards it. Okay, now if I want a little bit more, I'm going to lift my shoulders and my head as I do that. If I want even more, I'm going to start with legs straight and take a larger range of movement. So I can keep my knees bent or can take my legs both straight, starting from the ground and then coming up. If this becomes too much, put the weight down and do the work with no weight at all, or go back to that knees bent first position rather than the lengthened leg. 3, 2, if you're still here, bravo, 1. And bring the weight in, bend your knees. And you can, sometimes I just rest the weight on my stomach. You can take it to the side if that doesn't feel good. And pause, put your hands on your belly, elongate the back of the neck, put the head back down, and just breathe. Soften the shoulders, soften the abdomen. A few breaths here. And we'll come up for our boat or feet down, okay? So you can go back with the same level of weight or less or invisible weight. And we're gonna keep the heart high and take a little twist side to side. It doesn't have to be big to be very meaningful for the body, back and forth. Or you can then come into your shins parallel to the floor in more of that boat pose as you take these side movements, getting into those obliques, of course, the paraspinal muscles. Who are we kidding? We are there. 3, 2, 1, and come up to center. Move your weight to the side, and we're going to come all the way down onto the belly. So I just talked about the paraspinal muscles. We're coming into that for a moment, but we're also utilizing this to stretch through the abdominals and the hip flexors that we just condensed a lot. So come into your Sphinx pose, hands down, elbows beneath the shoulders. Roll the shoulders back, tops of the feet down. I like to take my feet wider than my hips. It just feels better. And you can choose the distance that feels good to you. Pull back with your elbows and your hands to lengthen your sternum forward. Don't think about coming up or jutting the chin. Think about drawing the sternum forward. Breathe here. So you're probably feeling a little more length in the abdomen and a little more condensing in those paraspinal muscles. Beautiful, that's what we're going for. If you want a little bit more, lift the elbows off the mat about 1/2 inch back into those triceps, even without using the weights here. 3, 2, 1. Lower the elbows and shift back into your child's pose. I love to just kind of move around a little bit. It's like the Tin Man in Wizard of Oz, oiling up those joints, ironing out any kinks. Okay, and from here, we're gonna do something that you might not be used to, and it's actually really good, awesome functional work. We're gonna do it from seated. So I recommend sitting on something, maybe a blanket or a towel that allows your hips to be the same height as your knees or even a little bit higher. So rather than being somewhere like kind of like sitting like this can also be done great in a chair. So you can always grab a chair. I'll wait for you. Go grab that chair. Okay, now I want you to start with a light weight. I'm gonna go with a 5. We're again gonna work some asymmetrical work, and I want you to make sure that it's just not too heavy. So lift one arm up and draw your organs gently back and draw the tiniest circle ever with your extended arm. Tiniest circle ever. Keep breathing. And then if you're feeling okay, you can increase the size of the circle. I love this because it gets into so many areas. Make sure you're not over hiking the shoulder up or gritting your teeth. Go in the opposite direction. I find when I reverse that direction, I go, oh, that actually made it a lot harder. You can turn your fist kind of facing in or forward. What feels best in the shoulder? Ooh, snap, crackle, pop. Let's do the other side. Start small. Little bitty. You always want to initiate the body very slowly and kind of give the brain and the body an idea of where you're going so it gets acclimated. And that might become a larger circle. Maybe one side is easier than the other. Reverse that rotation. Again, if you're reversing the rotation, starts kind of smaller first probably to once again become acclimated. All those muscles that are working together to support this long lever with a weight at the end of it. Long lever work is awesome. I also love doing contraction and extension, but this long lever work we don't see very often, and it can bring us a lot of strength. All right, and then go ahead and lower that down, palms down or up. Find your breath, soften through the shoulders here. Now take 2 of your light to mid-size weights, and you can either do this seated, or if you want a little more work in the glutes and the hamstrings, on the knees, maybe with a blanket under the knees. Make yourself have that L shape 90 degrees with the arms, and working the rotator cuff, we're just gonna draw the weight in towards the belly button and out any amount to the degree that it feels okay to you, that it feels safe. Out to the side. Again, this is not a movement that we do on a daily basis generally, and it's tremendously good for our shoulder strength and stability, and even flexibility. But you don't need to do a whole lot or have a lot of weight for it to be impactful. In fact, you can still work here, okay, with no weight at all. 3, 2, and last one. Hold it out for a moment, and then out and in, out and in. If you need to decrease how far out your hands are, do that. A little out and in. Oh, we might feel these tomorrow. Lift your low belly gently in and up. Make sure you're not sending that pelvis way forward or the hips way back. 3, 2, 1. Noodle arms. Let that go. And place your weights off to the side and join me in a downward facing dog. Let's just stretch out through the spine and through the arms here. Widen your foot stance. Swish your right hip way off to, or actually both hips, they're connected. Your pelvis way off to the right, and root your left palm down so you actually get more of that stretch laterally through the left side body. Breathe here. You probably feel this in your hips and your IT band and glutes. And then come back, shift your hips over to the left, root your right palm way down. Breathe as if you're bringing more breath into that right lung. Come back to center and move your blanket out of the way. We're just gonna do a little bit of crossbody stuff. I love to add this stuff. We're not gonna add too much. I'm gonna use 10s here, and we'll go ahead and take our feet into a wider stance, okay? So to start, wider than hips, but not so far that you feel like the structure isn't there, okay? And then I'm just going to turn and take my weights down towards one side, up, rotate, and down towards the other leg. Now, you can turn your toes out more, and you can even do this with your legs bent or your knees bent, okay? So there's a whole lot of ways to do this. You're coming across the body to one side, across the body to the other side. If this is too much to have two weights, all of this can be done like so with one weight. Make sure you know you can change things up as many times as necessary to make this workout something lasting, something you want to keep doing where you're not hurting yourself, okay? And again, I can do here, I can even add an element where I lift my weights in, switch, down, lift the weights, switch, and down, okay? There's a whole lot of ways to do it. I want you to choose what works. One more time each side. Center. Now you only need one weight for this. Place the other weight down, pause and center. Find your heart over the pelvis, over the feet, breathe. Acclimate yourself, find your breathing, feel the air on your skin and the breath in your lungs. And then from here, one of my favorite things to do for the legs, for the brain, for the whole body, I'm going to mirror you guys, okay? So keep your right foot forward, cross your left leg behind. So your left leg's gonna diagonally come behind. Again, for balance, you can put your hand on the waist, your right hand on the waist, or for a little more work, it can come off to the side. Hold your weight in your left hand, bend your front knee. That is critical. Bend your front knee and have it track over your second toe. And we're just going to come up and down. So it's similar to what we did in our lunge before, but we're in a much different lunge now. If you want to go further back or lower, feel free. That will increase the work of that hip joint. And then very carefully come back, remove that weight, put it in the other hand. Left foot forward, right leg back at a diagonal. That front knee is bent. Hand on the waist or out to the side for a little more functional movement. Back, hinging at that waist, up and down. If you want to add a little bit more, increase the length that your back leg is away, and you'll probably feel this even in the waistline and the hips. You can slow it down, and you can decrease the range of movement as well. Do you guys see me shaking? I'm shaking. Okay, now we're gonna add on. So come back to center, and I'm gonna ask that you put your weight down and try this with no weight first, okay? Go to where you started, cross behind, maybe tap, or come to center, stand. Cross behind, tap down, or center, stand, okay? Back and forth. For a lot of us, this is like, whoa, we haven't done this before. The brain and the body are just trying to find us in space. That's enough. If you want to use the weight, you switch it in the middle. When both feet are down, the weight switches. So if my left foot is forward, my right arm is down. I'm mirroring you guys. I'm telling you the opposite of what my actual reality is. Up and down. Bringing this dynamic movement into our lives, I cannot tell you how wonderful it is for the body and the mind. Breaking out of our patterns and bringing in something new. Neuro pathways just being created, blowing up. One more time each side, stay with it. And all the way up, hold that weight down. Breathe here. Relax the jaw. You are not just surviving, you are thriving. Even if you have to take breaks the entire practice, great, take breaks, come back when you're ready. All right, last movement is gonna be really amazing for the shoulders and the torso, and I recommend a very, very, very small weight. 5 is the least I have. You might wanna go lower than that because it's on a long lever. Reach the arms forward, left hand on top, right hand on bottom, and just rotate. You can rotate a lot or just switching top to bottom, back and forth here. This is exactly how we drive a car, right? La-di-da. All right. If you feel like, oh, I'm just not feeling it, then of course you can add more weight. And I lied, there's one more, one more before we go. 3, 2, 1. Hold that weight, elbows underneath, breathe. Unlock your glutes, unlock your knees, unlock your breath and your most positive thinking. Easier said than done, I know, I get it. All right, last one, because I videoed a practice before here and we did bicep work in that one, and then I started over and now I just recalled that that's not in this one, so we need to work them biceps. All right, I'm gonna go 12s on this. Go whatever weight you feel like is a challenge, but you're not shifting your pelvis forward to kind of throw the arms up. Okay, so optional, crossing of the feet. I know it's weird. It's just, again, working the brain, working the body differently. If you're newer to bicep work, then you're just going to either both at one time come into your lift and lower, nice and slow, time under tension. The slower you go, the longer you have time under tension. Sometimes we want to go slow for that. Sometimes we want to bring in something different. That's why we speed it up a little bit. If you're ready, cross one leg over to the other side, adding a different element of brain work and balance. And then if you get a little tuckered out, I would recommend holding one weight up, lowering the other one down, and vice versa. Let's cross the legs in the opposite leg forward position as we continue that bicep work. If you have lower back issues, you're probably gonna want to keep the feet wider, or even a kind of a split stance like this, okay? Instead of taking the feet crossed. Let's do one more, draw one weight down and up, unless you're using both. Other weight down and up. And rotate those in, hang them down, and let the weight help traction the arms down and give you a little stretch through the sides of the neck. And guess what? Put those weights down. I wasn't lying this time. This time it's like, no, we're actually done. Last time we're gonna come to that underside of the forearm stretch. If you need to pad your knees with a blanket or a towel, do that. Heels of the hands forward, fingertips back. You know the drill. To increase the stretch, you can sit back any amount. Keep breathing. And then shake it on out. Roll down onto your back. This time you're not holding onto a weight. Roll down onto your back. Hug the knees in, rock side to side. Because of that glute work we did earlier, yes, you bet, we do want to get a stretch. Put your left foot down, take the outer side of your right ankle right below or above the knee, depending on how you're looking at it. Engage the right ankle. Take your arm through the triangle in the middle, other arm wraps around, interlace in front or behind that knee, or stay here. If this is enough with the foot down and you're feeling a stretch, stay there. And I love to rock side to side and breathe into that hip, drawing in with my left knee and pressing out with my right. Kind of counterintuitive, but it brings a little bit of a deeper stretch. And if you want a little bit more sensation, kickstand your left arm out to the side, and I'm gonna scoot over so you can see a little bit more, and land on there, and whoo, you might feel that that stretch transferred to a little bit of a different section of the glutes. Breathe that. Breathe that, your hips will thank you. They'll be like, thanks. No, they probably won't actually thank you, but you know what I mean. Bring the legs in, legs up, shake. Make your legs totally slack here, your ankles slack, and kick, 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 kick. This is really great for varicose veins. It's really great for moving lymph, the lymphatic system. 3, 2, 1, and it's also just like if it's hard to wake up in the morning, that's a good one. Cross the left ankle to the top of the right knee, left arm through, right arm wraps around in front or behind the right knee. Engage the left ankle, and maybe rock-a-bye, baby. Oh, yeah. Optional kickstanding of the right tricep off to the side and then landing there, breathing. Soften the muscles of the face, soften the jaw. Come back in, hug it in, and shake it out. I do recommend a twist on this, so if there's a twist you love, great. I'm gonna recommend straightening the left leg, bending the right knee, crossing the right knee over any amount across the midline. It might be on a block or a bolster, whatever you've got. Right arm unfurls, palm up, and breathing here. Use your breath to help you find differences in your stretches. So you can fill up with breath and take a big sigh. And just feel how that changes the stretch that you're feeling, the release that you're feeling. Come back through midline and switch sides. Right leg extends, left knee in, twisting that left knee again to whatever height you have as far as if you have any bolster or a prop. Left arm extends and breathing here. Exploring that breath. You can even add a really full body stretch and then release it on an exhale. So many ways that you can dive into these postures that aren't just the habitual ways of doing them that can bring more benefit. Back to center, hug it all in. And then you might decide to take a rest in Shavasana. I teach yoga, as most of you know, and Shavasana is a great way to just let everything marinate. And instead of just jumping into the rest of your day and being like, I just worked out, no, I'm gonna do this, to take a pause. Even those giant airliners, even those giant planes, right, before they take off, they taxi up, they move, they pause. They pause and prepare, and then they leave. So sometimes we need to pause and prepare before we fly. Thank you so much for being here. My hat is off to you for all of your hard work. I have lots of other weight videos and weights and yoga fusions, which I feel is a it's a great partnership, or or yoga and high intensity fusions, or all three. Let me know in the comments what you want to see more of. Let me know if this was a benefit to you. And if it was, please consider hitting the like button. Maybe you can too. Thanks so much, y'all. Namaste.